So, hello everyone. Wait, let's get myself live. Let's get myself full screen here. As if anybody wants to see that, I suppose, on a nice, wet and grey, miserable Wednesday morning. But yes, on me. I've got the dogs with me on my bed at the minute, so in case you see any movement or hear any barking later on in the stream, and then you know why. But they did want to be left on their own. But yes, how are we getting on? We've got 3 people watching at the minute. I suspect that might go up a little bit once people have seen that I am live. Sorry, right, here we go. So Paul Spector, first as always. I love it, mate. All right, Michael, how are you doing, Paul? Yes, I am not doing too badly. Not doing too badly. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm still kind of still relishing in Monday night's victory. Although I think we are going to have harder games than that later on in the season. That is probably, with all due respect to Burnley, that is probably the most straightforward fixture we're probably going to have all season, really. And I find it quite funny, really, and it's not just Burnley fans, but Leeds fans to some extent. Some sections of both fan bases kind of went down the whole, we finished 24 points ahead of years, and it's funny because now we're 21 points ahead of Burnley, which is weird. And Leeds, it's touch and go whether they stay up or go down, but we shall see with it. Paul Spector says, how we got Robbie for 20 million, I will never know. Mate, I honestly, I think the reason that we probably got him for 20 million is because he didn't have a great time of things in the previous year, I think it was, or 18 months before we signed him. Otherwise, he would have probably cost 50, 60 million, not even joking. And that's probably how we ended up getting him for 20 million. So it's one, and that's the type of trademark Sunderland deal in this new regime where we've find someone who's obviously talented but has really had a bad time of things recently, where their value, where you can get them below their true value, you get them the right environment, and then all of a sudden their value starts to flourish. So yeah, but fair play on the club, fair play for Gazolfi, fair play for Speakman, and fair play to Stuart Harvey if he even played a part in it. Because remember when Broby was signed, Stuart Harvey was still here, so every single one of them deserves huge credit, and KLD in particular as well. Bo Jingles, love you, mate. How are we all doing? What a time to be back and back on top of the Barcodes. Yeah, well, hopefully whether we stay above them this weekend when we've got Arsenal away, I have absolutely no idea. And I think they've got Brentford at home, actually, which isn't an easy game, but Brentford, I know they won against Aston Villa, but I think Brentford generally away from home aren't that great. So let's wait and see. Fingers crossed Brentford can get something at St. James's at the very least, because I don't expect us to get anything. John Parr, hello, Michael. Hello there. Mr. Bone Jingles, a couple of comments. Amazing after AFCON. Absolutely. Mr. Bone Jingles, that was then, this is now. Love it. John again says, class what Sunderland have done to Lona Dingra. Shows we'll do what we can to take the next step. Yes, well, obviously we'll quickly brush over the Burnley game because obviously it's a couple of days old now. Can't believe we're like in February already in 2026. It's mental. But yes, we will quickly talk about the Burnley result and then obviously maybe look back at the January window as the title sort of says, and we'll sort of go, we'll go through all of those basically. Sorry, Bojingle's comment made me laugh. Is Speakman the love child of Del Point Trot? Yeah, you can't beat Only Fools and Horses. It's a classic sort of staple in TV, isn't it? But yeah, Sunderland 3, Burnley 0. What did you guys think of the game? I think for me, having looked back on it to reflect, the reverse game at Turf Moor really did annoy me because at the time, obviously, I didn't know it was the second game of the season, and I didn't know how well Sunderland were going to do in the Premier League. I didn't know how we were going to adapt to it. I didn't know how we were going to fare. I didn't know how our players were going to gel quickly enough or whatever it was. But for me, what was annoying was the fact that we lost to a team that I felt we should have been beaten. Now, don't get us wrong. There's no God-given right to win any game. And I was keen to stress that before the game on Monday night. There was no God-given right to win any game. And that day, for me, Burnley did deserve to win on the second half. But it did annoy me because I thought, well, that's a team we need to be beaten if we're wanting to stay up, regardless of whether it's away from home or not. Or at the very least, you don't lose. And I believe if Sunderland were close to full standard that day, we at least get a point. But either way, it was. So I did come away feeling a little bit deflated afterwards because I thought, even at the time, I said Burnley, mark my words, will go down. They will not have enough over the course of the whole season. And if you look at the teams they've beaten as well, and I don't want to try and go down that route because obviously there's still important wins at the time for them, but they beat the 2 promoted clubs that came up with them, and then they won away at Wolves. So it's like Okay, at the time, to be fair, the Sunderland win should be viewed really good now because obviously of how well we've done. But then Leeds could end up going down with them. We don't know. And then obviously Wolves are certainties as well as Burnley to get relegated at this point. So the point is, going into this game on Monday night, I was really wanting to sort of put that right and really wanting to sort of remind them, no, we actually are the better team. And that's not trying to be arrogant. I genuinely think our squad is streets ahead of Burnley's now. And if we're going to be fair, last season, Burnley were easily a top two championship side. Yeah, okay, going forward, I didn't think there was much difference between them and us. In fact, actually, I'm going to see if I can try and have a look to see what the 2024-25 championship. I want to see how many more goals they scored than us last season. What is the table saying? Let's have a look. Get the trusted old wiki out. Table. Right, there it is. So Burnley scored 69, we scored. So he goes, there's only 11 goals difference between them and us last season going forward. What helped them, as clean sheet wanker, as I call myself, is that they just kept clean sheets nearly every single game, and that was enough to help them get 100 points. I think Leeds have an argument last season for saying that I think that they might have been a 24 points ahead of us team, because even though I think we sacked off the last 6 games and that contributed heavily to us dropping off before the playoffs, Leeds, if they had a competent goalkeeper, probably would have finished 24 points ahead of us anyway. So I can get Leeds, but I also think that Burnley, the 24 points thing, I think, again, the fact we sacked off the last 6 games heavily skews that tally, and I don't think enough Burnley fans mention that. And another thing as well, this team we've got now is nowhere near the same team that we had last season. If you cast your mind back to, say the 2 games at Turf Moor last year, right? If you go and compare the starting 11 in the 0-0 when Trafford saved 2 penalties, and then to compare the starting 11 to the 2-0 defeat back in August, they're probably going to be two. At best, you're going to have Hume, Ballard, and maybe Lefay, and that's it. That's it. That's really only going to be it in terms of who's ended up starting, as opposed to the 2 Turf Moor games last year. So I don't know. I just find it interesting. So going into this game, I was thinking, no, we have to be winning, in my opinion. I know, obviously, for Burnley's sake, it was a must-win because, obviously, I don't know what on earth they were doing just sitting back playing for a point. Like, they're in a situation where they have to win games to have any slither of a chance of staying up. But to be fair to Burnley, they had got decent results in the 3 games prior to this, where they'd drawn 2-2 with Man United, who had just sacked Amarin. They'd drawn away at Anfield in the last minute, and then they'd drawn against Spurs. Okay, Spurs are Spurs, but they're still a lot better. They should be a lot better than Burnley. So I still class that as a good point for Burnley, even though they did drop points late on because they conceded. But for me, this was a game that, for me, if we're looking at least top half for the rest of the season, which, based on the evidence of what Siddiqui said, it looks like that they're never satisfied with just staying up. They want more. Then I think it would have been. Then I think, obviously, this is a game you need to win. Simple as that. Me, personally, I'm still looking at getting the 40 points, even though I do think we will stay up, and I think that's been pretty evident for a while, to be honest, unless something mental happens. I still want, in my head, I still want to get to the 40 points mark first, and then we'll look ahead. But, yeah, we're pretty much safe already, you'd like to think. But, you never know. You don't want to take your foot off the gas too much like we kind of did at West Ham. Oh no, I've already got that one. Drifter, Mr. Bojingles, ask Wayne. Wayne, I love you, but yeah, grow up, Wayne. Oh god, Wayne does love Lefay, by the way. He does like him. I think the argument Wayne had was a fair one, in the sense that if you had Lefay, arguably he doesn't get into our best 11. If Xhaka's back, Sadiqi's fit, Diarra's fit, you got Broby there. It depends who you play on the wings. It's a fair conversation. And I love Lefay, but he definitely gets in at the moment for me, as far as I'm concerned. Paul Spector and Drifters, Bo Jingles will tonight, apparently. I love it. Paul Spector there. XG was 0.06. Such a controlling game. Felt boring in the last 15 minutes, not going to lie. To be honest, mate, I think Burnley's heads dropped as soon as we went 1-0 up. That's what it looked like to me. And I do feel for their fans, and fair play to their fans who made the effort to travel up from Lancashire up to the northeast on a Monday night to watch that. Like, that was just absolutely insane. And I think that's dedicated support, but I think, sadly, it looks like they are starting to prepare for the championship. I think, and here's the theory, I think the reason they haven't sacked Parker is because apparently his contract runs out till next summer, June 2027. So, to me, they might be thinking, well, why pay him off to get rid of him now, when we know we're going down, and next year we could have him in the last year of his contract and he can help us get promoted. And then if they get promoted next season, then in the summer of 2027, that's when I suspect they will probably then look to not renew Parker's contract and get somebody else in if they're in the Premier League for 27-28. But I like to think far ahead, but yeah, who knows? Maybe I wouldn't surprise me if the Burnley hierarchy thought that way. Bob Jingles. If I'm honest, I think if we took our foot off the gas, as we should have had 3 or 4 more. Yeah, probably. Genuinely, I think there was a chance. Was it Hume or Mukiele? There was a great chance at 3-0 to make it. Obviously to make it 4. And I think and I think Broby even had a good chance not long even before the 3rd goal, didn't he? So we battered Burnley. We had chances to win by more. It's actually quite amazing how it looked like a training session for us. And don't get me wrong. I do reiterate that is probably going to be the easiest fixture we're probably going to have all season now. But I think, and it's a weird one because for me, Burnley were by far the worst team I've seen come to the Stadium of Light. I know people talk about Newcastle for a laugh or the visitors for a laugh, but at least they had a decent chance or two here and there. Not many, but across the game, I can remember maybe one half decent chance they had or a shot on target. Burnley didn't even have any of that. And actually, I think even Wolves looked much better when they came up here. Remember, Wolves was 1-0 until the 93rd minute. So, or whatever minute it was. But Wolves at least had a couple of really good efforts second half against us. Whereas I don't remember Burnley doing anything of the sort. John Parr. I thought Esteve from Burnley would have thrived in the Prem like Ballard. Yeah, actually, to be fair, I thought so. I do rate Esteve, actually. I think maybe it's because CJ Egan-Riley left them last summer for a free. I think he went to Strasbourg. And I think that's probably an indicator of maybe why Esteve struggled, because them two together, yes, it's in the Championship, the forwards aren't anywhere near as good as they are in the Premier League, but they had a rock-solid partnership. That was easy. Burnley were easily the best defensive team last season in terms of keeping goals out. So, I think when one half of that gets broken up, it's probably going to affect Esteve's performances to a degree. And Axel Twansby, I don't mind him, but he's not a Premier League defender. It pretty much he's going to get back-to-back relegations on his CV, and I think he's probably a good end Championship centre-back, but I'm not entirely convinced he's Prem level. He was good for me on FIFA a few years ago. If Labrise didn't sack those games off, it would have been 2-3 points difference, Max. I completely agree. This is why I said, even when we played Sheffield United in the final last year, when a lot of people were going, well, 14 points clear, Sheffield United clearly the better team. Context missing. Sunderland sacked off the last 6 games considerably and rotated. And even when we played a full 11, we clearly didn't want to get injured because we had an eye on the playoffs. It makes a bigger difference than people think. So, yeah, for me, I was like, nah. I think the points gap between Sheffield United and Burnley, I think it was skewed quite heavily. Leeds, I can get because I think they didn't finish on more because they didn't have a good goalkeeper, really. But the others, not quite the same thing. But yeah, so I agree. I think the points gap. I think our level last season was much closer to Sheffield United points wise, and quite significantly closer to Burnley. Macamon mission, is Europe realistic? Well, if I'm looking at the table now, if we're assuming 7th place would get you Conference League, for example, or depending how many Europa League places you get, then yeah, you could say it is realistic. Is it across the next 14 games? We're going to have to score quite a bit, I think. The only way we're going to be able to do it, I think, is if we're going to be winning 1-0 a lot. Now, don't get us wrong. I think that we have done amazingly. And even if we got 10th now, I'd take that because it's still even if the Mags end up finishing above us, because I still expect them to finish above us. But even if we got 10th, I think it would be an amazing achievement. Amazing achievement. Not even just for the money and people can say, oh, well, the money we spent or whatever else it is. But we also put what people don't mention is that we had to gel aside really, really quickly. And a lot of them were from overseas and hadn't had any Prem experience. The only ones we signed last summer that had anywhere near Premier League experience was Granit Xhaka, Simon Adingra, and Bertrand Traore. That's literally it. Everyone else, as far as I'm aware, unless someone corrects me in the chat, then, or respectfully anyway, I don't think anyone else literally had any Prem experience. But yeah, so you could answer, mathematically it is realistic, I suppose, at the moment. How long it stays realistic, time will tell. But I think the City would be buzzing if we got Europe. That, for me, is the level we should be at as a club. We should be, in my opinion, if functioning properly and ran correctly, we should be. There's no reason for me why we shouldn't be a top half regular in the Premier League and often challenging for Europe, even if we don't get Europe every year. That, for me, and I'm talking Conference League, Europa League. I'm not unrealistic. Champions League is always going to be a massive ask, but there's no reason for me why we shouldn't be challenging for Europe on a regular basis. Maybe not this season, but longer term future anyway. Since the Chelsea away game, I knew we would stay up. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, that was a momentous win, wasn't it? I thought we'd stay up probably since. Well, I thought we'd stay up at the start of the season. But the moment when I probably was convinced we actually were going to do it, I think was probably Forest for me, when we'd already got past a quarter of the way to 40 points, and it hadn't even been the end of September. Most definitely, Bo Jingles agrees. Paul says the only seventh place contenders I see are Sunderland, Mags, and Fulham. Let me have a look. I think you got to put Brentford in that conversation, mind. I think Brentford have been absolutely outstanding, especially when you consider what they lost in the summer and they changed to Keith Andrews. And I'll hold my hands up. I thought Brentford would get relegated, but shows what I know. Brentford, it just goes to prove Brentford, hopefully like Sunderland in the future, will run way too smart to be at risk of going down. And so fair play to Brentford for what they've done. It's incredible. So I would say the Mags. Oh well, okay. Let's include us for a second. Mags, us, Fulham, and Brentford. Everton, I think, are too inconsistent, and I think everyone else below will be too inconsistent. I could maybe possibly see Bournemouth if they get their act together, but I don't know. Richard pretty much agrees with me. Burnley were pants. Worst team to visit the Stadium of Light. Yep, completely agree. How much did Broby says Bojingles cost compared to Worcester and Old Saint Nick? I love this comparison. Worcester, I think combined, Worcester and Voltamada cost Newcastle around 120 million. I think I might have that wrong, but I'm pretty sure I don't. It might not include add-ons or whatever it was. Kevin says, "All right, Michael, did we get rid of Pervader?" Well, I thought we did, but it doesn't look like we did. It's a shame, as Bojingle says, unfortunately not. Paul says, "I can't believe Palace spent 85 million on Larson and Johnson. I'd have had Brennan Johnson personally. I actually really would have liked to have had him, but having said that, it's one of them, isn't it? 35 million, but I think I'm surprised he went to Palace considering that Glasner's going to be leaving. They've just sold Gahey and they're on a bit of a dip at the minute. I don't think Palace will go down, by the way. I think they will have enough because I think they've got Burnley and Wolves both at Selhurst Park to come up. So if they beat both of them, they're on 35 points or whatever it is. So Palace will be all right, but they're going to have some serious things in the summer to think about because Mateta, I think, has stayed. They've obviously signed Strand Larson from Wolves. So good thing is we don't have to play against Strand Larson again this season. So that's a positive. Because we've played Palace twice. But yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. But then again, when you're talking about 85 million for them, that's the power that being established can give you because it means they can spend a lot more. So I think it's going to be a fascinating way to see how it pans out for Sunderland if we can become established. But and I'm talking properly, like permanently established if we can. But I think it just goes to prove that January's a ridiculous window. And okay, we got is it Angulu? I think we're going to call him that. But I probably got his name wrong, pronunciation wise. But it just goes to prove how difficult a window January is. Strand Larson not worth the money. See, I like Strand Larson. I think that this season he's been poor. He hasn't got many goals, but you have to bear in context Wolves' 11 and how a lot of their best players apparently, well, not all, but a couple of their key players were sold in the summer, I think. So that is obviously going to impact things. I think Strand Larson will prove to be a good signing for Palace. But yeah, I mean, 50 million or whatever it was, that is a lot. But fair play to Wolves. And you can see Wolves are preparing for the Championship, aren't they? So they've signed Adam Armstrong from Southampton. So yeah, it's what it is, isn't it? Bojingles, me as well, mate. I would absolutely also love the City to host Thursday Night Football. We should be. We've got the potential to be a regular in that conversation, so why not? It's all about spending right, says Paul. We will never overpay like that. Well, that's the thing. This is why I've always said that I said at the start of the window, if you guys remember, at the start of the window, I was saying, do not be surprised if we do not sign huge names within the window, really. Don't be surprised if we don't go all out to sign a couple of wingers, and maybe another striker, maybe another midfielder, because, yeah, okay, PSR is changing to SCR in the summer, but because we've been so careful in January, we apparently have a lot of wiggle room to go. If you look back at the fantastic article by Mark Douglas, who, I was going to say Mark Douglas for a second there. Mark Douglas basically put out a piece on iPaper that it was basically, apparently our wiggle room for PSR was 120 million. Now, okay, since we've signed Angulu, I think we've spent some like 18 million quid or whatever it was, maybe including add-ons, or 15 million. So that probably goes down to like 100. But even then, we should still have a lot of wiggle room for the summer. And that's before any player sales happen as well. Because you got to think, if say Millwall get promoted, Anthony Patterson, there's a good chance I think he goes there permanently. You could probably get around about 10 million for him, I think. You've got Yeo Yelder going to Sheffield United. I didn't think personally he was anywhere near as bad as what a lot of people said he was. At centre back, at left back, he was pretty honking. But at centre back, I think there is a competent Championship player in there. So say he does well there, then Sheffield United could maybe give us a couple of million, and we could make a bit of money on him. Even if it's not a massive profit, we could still get a bit of money. It's all about it's all about the trading and the player sales and stuff. That's how we were able to do so well last summer when in 24-25 in that financial year, if I'm right, we sold Jack Clark, Joe Bellingham, and Tommy Watson. We made a massive amount of money, and that's how we're able to. This is the market. This is the market these days. You have to be able to sell as well as buy well, and that for me is such a massive factor in how clubs are able. Like, look at why do you think Brighton, Brentford, and Bournemouth, for example, have been able to establish themselves because they've gone down this route. Now, don't get us wrong. I'm not saying I don't want to just exist to become the next Brentford, Brighton, and Bournemouth. But I think you can do that while being ambitious at the same time. Because while I do believe that what they're doing is what we're doing, while I believe what we're all doing is the right way to go about it, at the same time, I want Sunderland to surpass those teams and get better than those teams because we should be able to. We should have the capital and the attraction in order to do it if we're ran properly. So, but yes, that's where the seller's market is a massive thing. You have to sell at the right time because then it increases your turnover. It then gives you more money to spend. In turn, it can give you a chance of getting better players. And the cycle goes again, but the bar's there to there. And that means you can, it's like, as long as you ran properly, it's like a conveyor belt. Like Elborg, for example, and we'll get onto the transfers January window in a minute. But like Elborg, for me, is signed as a long-term Roofs replacement. In the immediate here and now, he is an Anthony Patterson replacement. But longer term, he will be a Robin Roofs replacement. Because let's be honest, in 18 months' time, I think we'll keep Roofs for next season, actually. I mean, touch wood, I'm not eating me words there. But my gut feeling says that anything could happen. We could leave in the summer, but my gut feeling says we'll keep him for next season. But at the end of next season, I think we're going to find it hard to. If he doesn't go this summer, which I don't think he will, then next summer we're going to find it very hard to keep hold of him. But that's where Elborg has time to acclimatise to the area, time to adapt, time to adjust, and time to learn his trade a bit. And then hopefully by the time Roofs does leave, Elborg is ready to step in and competently take his place, and then we're not losing too much quality in goal. Sorry for that little tangent there. Hopefully you found that interesting. But yeah, Kevin says, Michael, who of the big teams have we got left to play this season? Well, if you mean the traditional big six, I'm assuming that's what you mean. We've been to all of them away from home. Sorry, after Saturday, we'll have been to all of them away from home. We have Liverpool, Tottenham, Manchester United, and Chelsea to come to the Stadium of Light. And then I think that's it. I mean, you talk about obviously the unbeaten home record's great to have, but I suspect we're going to lose at least one of those games. But hopefully not. It'd be class if we went the whole season unbeaten at home, but it's very hard to do in the Premier League. Very, very hard. To be fair to Burnley, fair play to them last season for doing it in the Championship, because even that's over 23 games to not lost once. They should have lost to us, really, but to not lose once is impressive. To be fair. Cairo will bring in Moussa Dembele when his contract ends. When does his contract end? I mean, don't get us wrong. I mean, that'd be brilliant if we could have him, but we'll see. Wolfsburg, boom jingles. Where have you seen this, mate? Wolfsburg wants Sealed for 16 million euros. Well, that's another. Well, okay, if that's true, that's another example. So I think I saw something like Sealed for 12 million quid, and we spent like 2 million on him. So even the players who aren't going to feature for us longer term as we go hopefully progress up through the Premier League, even the players that aren't featuring on a regular basis will add a profit for the club, which will increase our turnover and then help our financial situation. All of these things add up. All of these little details add up. This is why I go on about, and this is when I try to think of a transfer window for Sunderland, I don't just try. I try personally not to look at just the current window or the current season. I do to an extent, but I try to look at the next couple of seasons ahead and see what we're going to do, because I can see a trajectory plan in here. Sean makes a joke, I can see into the future. I promise you, I can it. But it's just, for me, it's a logical conclusion. Maybe it's me being autistic, I don't know. Yeah, Paul Spector, what's your starting 11 when we have a full squad and Xhaka and Traore to come back? That is a very good question. I'll ask that question in the chat, actually. What would your strongest starting 11 be when everybody's fully fit? If I'm asking, oh, no, this is hard. Okay, my strongest back five, as including the goalkeeper, would be the same. It would be Roofs, Mukiele, Ballard, Alderete, Reynildo. I think the midfield three for me is Xhaka, Sadiki, Diarra. I love Lafayette a bit, but I think that is our strongest midfield. I think it's athletic. I think it's physical. I think it's pacey. Obviously, Xhaka not so much, but it's got the right amount of balance of athleticism, of control, of pace, physicality as well. And I think Diarra will add something to us going forward as well, providing he doesn't get another injury. Who do you put on the left wing? I thought Talby was class the other night. See, this is the conversation I want to have. It's so hard to try and fit everyone into a system. Traore gets in on the right. I think that's fair. Broby's up front. It's that left wing position. I think it's either Talby or Lefay. I really think so. But then Angulu, I haven't seen him play. I don't know what he's like. So, well, I would. Okay, let's say it's Talby for the moment, right? But so just to quickly go through it. So assume it's this 11: Roofs, Mukiele, Ballard, Alderete, Reynildo, Xhaka, Siddiqui, Diarra, then Talby, Traore, and Broby. But then you've got Lefay on the bench, Gertruda on the bench, Angulu on the bench. You've got there's a couple of other ones: Wilson Isidore, Eliza Mayenda, Chris Rigg on the bench. You've got Trey Hume on the bench. It's a depth of options, isn't it? And that's what ultimately will help us succeed in the Premier League, I think. So yeah, but very good question, Paul. It had to really make me think. Drifter says Manchester City, Liverpool, and Chelsea are interested in Roofs, I'm afraid. Cop off 100 million then. That's a good thing, by the way. Roofs is under contract till 2030. So even when he does go, we should be well bloody compensated for it. If we stay unbeaten at home, we'll be the first team outside the Big Six to do it. That'll be very tricky to do, but I really hope we can. Morning, Acacia, my friend. How are you and Nikki doing? Hopefully had a safe trip back the other night. I'll tell you what, Acacia, because I know you like Sheffield United as well. I'll say this for your mind. If you keep Calvin Phillips fit, that is a cracking signing at championship level, in my opinion. So fair play to Sheffield United for that. Bone Jingle says, end of 2027. Is that Sealt's contract, I'm guessing you're talking about? Sealt was in the Blinder German paper. Okay, hang on. Oh, hang on, I've gone through quite a few more comments. Right, let's have a look. Sorry, guys, just bear with me. I'm just trying to get through all the comments before I talk about the window. Roof, Mukiele, Ballard, Alderete, Reynildo, Xhaka, Siddiqui, Diarra, Traore, Broby, Talby, /Nwanga. That's pretty much the same as mine, mate. But it's so hard to leave Lefay out because I think Lefay's been really good recently. Do you know what's quite funny, actually? That's how massive getting... Oh, God. I'm going to end up getting like 20,000 messages on my phone here. But no. I think it's weird, though, because that promotion at Wembley, don't underestimate how big that is. And quickly, just to add to this, I want to refer you to a piece that James Copley wrote for the Sunderland Echo. I know he's often referred to as Copley and Pace, but guys, I promise you, he is a really, really good journalist, and he's a good friend of mine. Well, I consider him a friend. Hopefully he considers me one. But no, I was going to say, I think Copley wrote a fantastic piece, and it was talking about acknowledging the work that Dan Neil, Anthony Patterson, Patrick Roberts, and all that have played, in particular them three, but a lot of the squad, but them three in particular played to getting us back into the Premier League. Don't underestimate how massive that promotion at Wembley was, because that's enabled us to have Lefay permanently. It's enabled us to have Xhaka. It's enabled us to have Diarra, Siddiqui, Traore to an extent, obviously Talby as well, Angulu if he's any good, Mukiele, Reynildo, Ballard, Alderete, Roofs, the amount of quality that brings you. That win was so massive for Sunderland as a trajectory, because for Sunderland to get into the potential that we have, for Sunderland to reach its maximum potential, we had to be in the Premier League. Obviously, we had to do well in it, of course, and Sheffield United fans won't thank me for that because it's at their expense, but it says a lot, actually. Last year, Sheffield United finished... Okay, the gap for me wasn't as big on the pitch, but they did finish 14 points ahead of us, to contradict myself a bit there. But they were year one parachute team. We were a non-parachute team. We beat them in the playoff final, and they're now loaning Leo Yelder from us, which says quite a lot how... And it's crazy how in the last year, football's changed so much in the trajectory of both Sunderland and Sheffield United. What does everyone think of the new signing, Jocelyn Tarby, as well? Because apparently I saw next the other day that Jocelyn has got an injury, so he still can't start at some point. I think Tarby is a future signing in the making. I think he's going to be someone who will... I think he's going to be someone for the couple of years down the line. But the good thing is, because we know we're going to be in the Prem next season, really, the good thing is we can afford to start planning ahead for signings like that. So, I've got no problem with that. Richard says Lefay needs to be in. Mate, Joe, be fair, I really would love to put Lefay in there, but it's quite tricky. And I love, but again, this is the conversation you want to have. You want to be able to talk in this conversation about how you can accommodate everyone in the same team, and it's great. It's a fantastic position to be in. Kevin says Arsenal must be kicking themselves for letting Ballard go. Absolutely. Kay says, yeah, Good. Thank you, Bowers. Didn't get home to 1:15 a.m. yesterday morning. Yeah, I'm not surprised. But fair play to you. And the signings we made of Calvin Phillips, I was like, geez, no way we got him. No way, no. You know, it'd be fair enough. But I think if he stays fit, which is the key bit, keep him fit. He's a great signing. I really think he is. I don't think Joe Rothwell's a bad signing for Sheffield United either. Actually, would you not sell any of our young players until summer 2027 to get maximum value? Possibly. I mean, I do get it because when you look at the players who are on 5-year contracts, a lot of them are going to be under contract till 2030. So even if we don't sell any until 18 months' time from now, they're all still going to have 3 years left on their deals. So it means we should still be well compensated. That's why I make a hoo-ha about how long you give a player a contract, because down the line, it matters in terms of what your revenue can be and what it can help your turnover. Acacia says, hopefully he can start getting some game time now since he didn't at Man City. Didn't much at Ipswich last season either, did he? Tom Watson deserves so much credit. Yes, he does. I think quickly on that, I think Tommy Watson now, it's funny, a lot of our team from last season scattered across the Championship now. Tommy Watson and Anthony Patterson at Millwall, Dan Neil at Ipswich. Who else is there? Yelder at Southampton, at Sheffield United, and obviously Patrick Roberts at Birmingham. So it's just quite funny, isn't it, how it's all happened? But yeah, Tommy Watson, fair play. And actually, in a way, it's good for him. Last season to have ended that way for Tommy Watson after the stick he was getting. And some of it justifiable because I think he wanted to jump ship, really, or how I looked at it. But he's also scored the goal that's banked us a couple of $100 million. So, I can't not lock him for that. And again, remember that, and remember as well that Anthony Patterson, without that mental save from Kiefer Moore in the first 2 minutes, and the important save against Andre Brooks at 1-0 when we would go on to equalise a few minutes later. And in the League One playoff final as well, he made a massive save from, what was his name? Sam Vokes, when Bailey Wright misjudged a header. And that was a 1-0 at that point. So that goes in as a different game. All of these guys that we've sold that have it's a hint of sadness, as James Copley has said. But these guys have played a massive part in getting Sunderland back where they belong. And I think they all deserve a lot of appreciation for that. Musa Dembele says Bojingle's contract ends 2027. Do you not mean Ousmane? I don't know who you're talking about, Paul, but maybe I'm just being slow and dim-witted. Bojingle says £100 million for Rubes. I hope you forgot to say it. And the player. No, realistically, we're not going to get 100 million, but I think because keepers don't tend to go for as much as that. But I'd be disappointed if we didn't get at least 50 to 60 at a minimum. By the way, so I don't know. Let's see. Oh, anyway, here we go. Right. Knowing me, knowing you. Lovely name again, mate, and love your picture of Jacka. Morning, Michael. Rumour has it that Bobby is stronger than the average man fan order. And rest in peace, George Foster. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I would have forgotten otherwise. Yeah, George Foster, I mean, what a guy. He didn't quite reach 100 years old, unfortunately, but, obviously he's a very popular figure among the fan base. And I think, my thoughts go out to his friends and family. And Joanne Youngson as well, who runs I think, is it the Hebben Liaison branch or Jarrow? I can't remember. Whichever one it was. Joanne, if you're watching, sorry if I've got that wrong. But, yeah, I mean, she'll be gutted as well. I think a lot of the fan base is gutted. And what was great was that the club did a piece dedicated to him. And I think that says a lot about how well thought of he is in the fan base. So, yeah, rest in peace to George, mate. Hopefully you're up there enjoying time with Gary Rowell now. Bo Jingles says, I think the club are a transfer window or two ahead. Yeah, I think they are as well, mate. And speaking of transfer windows, let's go on to the transfer window because I've gone through half an hour because I do the incoherent waffle and I do not get onto things quickly enough. So the transfer window. So off the top of my head, so obviously we signed 3 players. We signed Tarby, we signed Angulu, and we signed Elborg. So if I was to go through the 3 signings, I think Tarby and Elborg are 2 of them that are pretty much for the future. Which I don't have a problem with because I think it's planning ahead. I mean, combined, I think we spent something like £7 million on both, as in combined together. So I think it's smart business to do at this point, and I don't blame the club whatsoever for going out and thinking about the future. And we're in a position because we've started so damn well. We've been able to get these players and be able to bed them in, get them used to the environment, and it gives them a better platform to then go and thrive later on when maybe a couple of player sales start to happen, because then we've got natural replacements in through the door, which in turn gives us more money for other positions. So I think for those 2, it's hard to say it's hard to say on any of the signings. I haven't watched any of them play, but those 2 in particular, I know for a fact I'll be very confident they are for the future. And I've got no issue with that. It's good to plan ahead. It's good to have a strategy. This is what Brighton have tended to do over the last few years, and hence why they're able to become established again in the Premier League. Sorry, established, not again, but for them, established in the Prem, and that's what's going to hopefully help us do the same thing, if not emulate better than them. And then as for Angulu, I think it is, I mean, this one was a weird domino effect, wasn't it? Because Aushish had to go to Schalke permanently to free up an international loan spot, which then allowed Adingra to go to Monaco on loan with a view to an option in the summer. And then it meant we could get Angulu in. Now, personally, I think we should have tried to make that signing first anyway. But nevertheless, we have got it. And look, apparently from what Anderlecht's fans are saying, that he's a very exciting player. The thing that gives me encouragement, we signed Sadiki from the Belgian league, and he's adapted brilliantly. Now, apparently I've heard that, I've read somewhere that Angulu is apparently more physical than Adingra. If that's the case, he should suit the Premier League better. But again, we don't know how that will adapt until we don't know how he will adapt until we get to that point. So we need to see him play first. But if we're spending 15 million quid on him, this is what we do. We find good bargains elsewhere in foreign windows and bring them in. And often, and Alt Endy mentions this, and go and subscribe to Taff and Conor Bromley, by the way, two excellent YouTubers. But he mentioned that we get players in probably about a year earlier than the established big six clubs go in for them, because we get them when they haven't reached their full value yet. But because we'll give them game time, allow them to develop, and then eventually leave the club when they outgrow us, which will be sad, but we get them for a cheaper fee, and we end up making a massive profit on them. Or if they stay, they're an absolute success for us. And that's how you... Obviously, that will get harder as time goes on, because clubs will now know that we can do that, and we know that, oh, well, Sunderland got Premier League money, we can charge a bit more. But no, so I think, as far as Angulu's concerned, I need to see what he's like when he plays. But if these things are accurate, what I'm seeing on social media, again, it is social media, but if these things are accurate, we could be in for a hell of a signing, but we will wait and see. There you go, Nathan. Hope that was all right for you. But yeah, now let's talk about the outgoings, because I think the window was kind of more synonymous for outgoings for me than incomings. So please tell me if I'm missing anyone. But off the top of my head, I think it was, so obviously Dan Neil left the club on loan. Leo Yelda left the club on loan. Simon Adingra left the club on loan. Anthony Patterson left the club on loan. Jay Matete left permanently to go to MK Dons. Patrick Roberts left permanently to go to Swindon. Why do I feel like there's another really fringe squad player that I'm forgetting to miss? Well, okay. So please, anyone tell me if I've got any of that wrong. Please, anyone tell us if I have missed anyone out. But let's start with a couple of the permanent deals. So I think we'll start with Jay Matete. I think Jay Matete was... Look, it's mental, this, actually. I think he was the last player... Well, hang on. No, Roberts... No, okay. The last... Apart from Luke O'Nien, I think he is the... correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's the last player that we signed in the League One era that is at the club now. No, sorry, tell a lie. Sirkin's still there. Hume's still there. So, yeah, okay. Elise to Portsmouth. Thanks very much, Drift. I forgot about that. We'll start with Jay Matete. Yeah, like I said, I think Matete was someone who we signed in the League One era, and I think he was someone who was viewed as... I think he was probably a victim of circumstance in many ways, because I think if we'd stayed in League One, and thankfully we bloody didn't, but if we had stayed in League One for 22-23 season, then I think what would have probably happened is that the Matete would have featured a lot more for Sunderland. And I think it was clear when we got into the Championship that he's probably not good enough for the Championship. I think for MK Dons, I know MK Dons are in League 2, but I would say Jay Matete is a potential high-end League One midfielder. And I think for MK Dons, I think it's a really good deal. I think Paul Warren's got a really good side assembled, apparently, for League 2 level. So he really needs to be getting promoted with MK Dons. But I think I would view it as Jay Matete was never going to cut it here. And I think we won't have got much of a fee, because I think he was in the last 6 months of his contract. If we get anywhere close to like 100,000 or something, then it's probably worth it, really. Well, it would have been worth selling him anyway, because we won't have made money back off him. But for how much we signed him from Fleetwood 4 years ago. But I think Jay Matete was one that needed to get game time, and he did play his part. He played his part in helping us go up from League One, and he's already becoming known to be successful in the lower league. So I really hope he does find success at MK Dons. And hopefully he ends up doing well, because I think he should be too good for League 2 level, really. Let's get on to right. So Patrick Roberts was the next permanent deal, but I'll go with Patrick Roberts at the end, because I want to group a bunch of these lads together. But let's go to Drifter's comment. Adji Elise. Now, Elise is one for me that there was a real debate at one point about how. Yeah, the crows are going really loud outside. Um, there was a real debate in the championship for a while about how whether Agi Elise or Dennis Serkin should be our starting left back. Now, for me, I view Elise as a centre half. I mean, he can play left back. I know that. I can't remember who was it. Someone disagreed with me. I think it was it Taff. Maybe said he viewed him as or Connor said he viewed him as a left back rather than a centre half. Someone I remember someone was speaking to, or someone on YouTube said it. But anyway, I think Elise. Now, this is the key thing for Portsmouth. If they keep him fit, I feel like I'm saying this a lot, but if they keep him fit for Portsmouth, then I think that is a sensational signing for the bottom end of the championship, because I think keeping him fit, he's a more than good enough and more than able championship defender, and I think he would give Portsmouth a cracking chance of staying up if he does stay fit. Whether he does or not, I don't know, and I believe his contract is. I believe his contract runs out in 2027 for Sunderland. So I think it comes to a point that, like we're kind of Sunderland getting promoted to the Premier League, really, I think Agi Elise will probably end up leaving in the summer on a permanent, because a lot of these lads we've kind of moved on from, as harsh as that sounds. But I think for Agi Elise, I think to go to Portsmouth, I think is a really, really good move. Portsmouth's a big club for the Championship anyway, so he'll know about playing in big environments. So that's what I'd say to that one. The next one I think would be right, let's go to Leo Yelder going to Sheffield United. Well, thanks very much for the movement you did for Ballard's goal against Coventry. For starters, that's always a good help, isn't it? So yeah, look, I think Leo Yelder was someone who his debut against Middlesbrough, I thought he was really good, and I actually thought he was good in the following game against Plymouth when we won 3-1 under Beale. But I think since then, what's happened is I think at left back he is very, very shaky when I've seen him generally. But at centre half, I think there is a competent Championship centre half in there. Don't forget, it was made clear very much last season Lebris likes Yelder. So, I think if we're trusting Lebris's judgment, I think we have to trust him on Yelder as well then, because I think, Yelder for me then is for me, I think in the right environment, I think Yelder will be a good enough Championship defender. Now, Sheffield United are going to be, I know they're not doing great at the minute, but I think Sheffield United, what will happen for them is they will have a number of games where they're expected to dictate the ball, dominate possession, and whatever. So I think Leo Yelder could very well suit Sheffield United. And Chris Wilder, as much as I don't like the prick at all, he does see something in him quite clearly. So I do think there is something there for Leo Yelder at Championship level. And his contract, I believe, is until 2028. Because I think we signed him on a 4.5-year deal in the January 2024, I want to say. So if that happens, then I think, if he comes back in the summer, then we could maybe make a few million off him. So that's always the hope, isn't it? But hopefully, fingers crossed, he does well there. The next one, I think, then we kind of have to group these lads together, really. I know Roberts left Birmingham on a permanent. Anthony Patterson went to Millwall on loan, and Dan Neil went to Ipswich on loan. Let's start with Patrick Roberts. Yeah, what can you say about Patrick Roberts? I think there were times Patrick Roberts really frustrated me. I think it was clear in League One that he was too good to be in League One. Absolutely too good to be in League One. I think in the Championship, it's a weird one because his second season, in the 23-24 season, he really didn't have a good year. He got like 1 assist, but he was also plagued with injury quite a lot of it as well. So if you're looking at 2022-23 and 2024-25, if you to look at those seasons together, he got double figures in both in goal contributions in both of those seasons. So I think his best season for us was the first year in the Championship, but I think a lot of that was down to the fact he had Amad Diallo next to him, and I think it's quite clear that he missed him when Amad Diallo was clear that Amad, of course, wasn't going to come back from Man United, and of course he wouldn't. Man United are one of the biggest clubs in the world. It was clear that Roberts did take a while to adapt without him, but when Roberts linked up with Amad, he was one of the best wingers in the Championship, and he was very exciting to watch. His end product often wasn't good enough for me in terms of what you should want from a promotion challenge inside in the Championship, but. And when I say end product, I mean more goals than anything else. But Roberts last season did improve in terms of assists, and I'm very proud to see that Roberts and Sunderland both took a chance on each other when he joined in January 2022, and that's hard to believe, isn't it? That was 4 years ago. Wow, time goes quick. But Roberts joined us in January 2022, and he was someone who I think was. He was in need of a home. He was in need of a place where he could settle down because he'd been at Man City and then loaned from club to club to club to club to club for 6 months, every 6 months or so. Sunderland gave him a chance, gave him a home, and Roberts took a chance dropping down to League One. And the goal he scored at Sheffield Wednesday for me will always be remembered as one of the most important goals of Sunderland's recent history. Because without that, we don't probably get to Wembley. and we don't get, and there's a good chance we don't get promoted to the Championship. So I think Roberts has got a big place in Sunderland folklore. Was he good enough for the Premier League? For me, he was never going to be. I remember he came on against Burnley at Turf Moor, and although he looked reasonably quite lively, I did think that, well, actually, you know, this is the game you might get away with it in the Premier League, but in general in the Premier you'd get found out, I think. So, but there's no doubt that Roberts had the work rate and the effort, and I loved Roberts's how much it meant to Roberts. So Roberts, weird thing is for me, Roberts is technically one of the best players I've ever seen play for Sunderland. But then when he gets to the final third, he goes and then doesn't, and then his end product isn't quite there. The pass isn't on there, or whatever it is. But there's no doubt Roberts played a massive part in us getting back to where we are. And I want to mention to end on Roberts, I thought he made a massive difference at Wembley when he came on against Sheffield United. He gave Sheffield United something else to think about, and maybe it proves that Rob. And I'm glad to see that he seems to be doing well at Birmingham, and that he's really well liked at Birmingham because he deserves it. He absolutely deserves it, and I think he needs somewhere where he's going to play more regularly. And it wouldn't be fair for Roberts to, come here, be bit part, and go out on loan for 6 months. That's pretty much what he came to Sunderland to avoid. So it's good that we're doing right by players and going right. Good luck for your career, and thanks ever so much for what you've done for us. Go and smash it in the Championship. And I think for Birmingham, it is a good signing. I'll get onto the comments again in a minute. But the last two I want to touch on is Anthony Patterson and Dan Neil. I think, let me have a quick look. Oh, yeah. I want to quickly get onto this, right? Flint, Jamaica Dove said, bottom line is they weren't good enough, Michael. Club is moving forward. Standard is way higher now. It's football, pal. Yep, it absolutely is, but it doesn't mean they can't be acknowledged. But I think, to be fair, Mickey is right. It is the standard now. These players, for me, were not going to be good enough in the Premier League, and you had to be ruthless. Otherwise, you go straight back down, unfortunately. But I do think they did deserve some of their recognitions as to what for the effort they put in for the club. But let's go on to the last two before I start reading some more comments. So let's start with Anthony Patterson. Anthony Patterson, for me, is someone who obviously divided opinion quite a bit, actually. And even those times when I said his distribution wasn't great, his coming for crosses initially wasn't great, but I do feel he did improve at that, and I don't think that gets mentioned enough. He did improve a lot at coming for crosses, in my opinion. Obviously, for every worldy save he could make, like a Kiefer Moore, you also had a moment against Hull where he dropped the ball in the back of his net, basically. And he's embracing his inner league camp. Nah, Anthony Patterson's nowhere near as bad as league camp. He's not even a bad keeper. For me, Anthony Patterson is a top-end Championship keeper. Now, he could prove to improve to be a Premier League one. I don't know. But I think Sunderland were at the point where we had to be ruthless, pun intended there. And I think Anthony Patterson played a massive part again, like I mentioned earlier, like Roberts did, in a different sense, in getting us back to where we belong. As I said, the save from Sam Vokes in the playoff final, and then the two saves he made in the Championship playoff final. Again, the one from Kiefer Moore, which is one of the best saves I've ever seen a Sunderland keeper make. And then obviously the one from Andre Brooks, which if that goes in, that's 2-0 and it's game done. And we're sitting here playing in the Championship again. Rather than being back in the Premier League. And don't get me wrong, considering we were in League One for 4 years, I could more than handle being in the Championship, but it wasn't where I wanted to be long term. But Anthony Patterson more than played his part here. And I think, as well, Patterson, when history looks, and again, James Copley, I'll reference him again, when he mentioned this in the article, I think it's right. History should look back on Anthony Patterson fondly and kindly. He made his debut in League One. He was targeted. I remember the Wickham game, which was the 3-3, where Wickham targeted him quite a bit, but he improved a lot since then and came up with Sunderland through the leagues. And even if he leaves now, and even if it's the end of his chapter at Sunderland, he's left with a big legacy, and he's left with for me, he should leave with a good reputation intact, to the point where people should look back at his services fondly. And what he did, as much as he wasn't going to be good enough for the Premier League, he's enabled us to get much better. And I can more than appreciate him for that. And then the last one is Dan Neil. Now, if you look at Jimmy Paddy in particular, I know he really does not like Dan Neil at all. And that is his opinion. That is totally fine. That is his opinion. He's entitled to it. But I passionately disagree with it, because I think Dan Neil is someone who had to adopt the 6 role. And contrary to what I think a lot of people think, I actually think he does a pretty good job as a 6 at Championship level, by the way. I don't think Dan Neil would have got the minutes in the Premier League, because at the moment, I don't see Dan Neil as good enough for the Premier League. In time, I think he could be. And I'm not the only one. Look at Graham Falk. I think there's Graham Falk. I think there's even maybe Phil Smith might have said this. There's a few people have the same view as me, where Dan Neil can certainly step up to the Premier League in the right circumstances. Now, I think Dan Neil, we've got to bear in mind, The only thing that soured it a little bit for me was not signing a contract when he had the chance to get Sunderland a bit of money, like what Jude Bellingham did at Birmingham. Now, I know the circumstances are different before you say that in the comments. I know the circumstances are different. But you got to remember, Dan Neil, there was clearly interest in him over the years from I would say probably for around the £10 million mark, maybe more. There, for me, are clubs that would have been prepared to pay that if he was on a contract. And I think if he wasn't going to sign a contract, then for me, last summer was the prime chance to sell him. But at that point, we didn't know how well we were going to do. We could have needed Dan Neil. So, to be fair, I can understand why we didn't do it. Now, I think Dan Neil played a massive part in the Championship. In the first league, if you remember when he first broke through in the final League One season, he was obviously someone who was from the academy. They were all from. He was still having to get used to first team football and everything else. But hang on, sorry, I'm just quickly going through these comments again. But no, it was sad really that we were in League One. But in the early part, he looked really, really good. But he obviously got burnt out as the season goes on. And Alex Neil, of course, probably did the right thing in giving him a bit of a breather to come back the next season. Now, when it comes to the Championship, I thought in the first couple of seasons, he was one of our best players. I thought in 22-23 he was good. And I thought in 23-24, he was one of our better players. He was easily one of our better players, in my opinion. Now, I know that's not a high bar, considering how that season ended. But in the last 3 games, you remember, under Mike Dodds, we really missed Dan Neil. And I think he's someone who's good at doing the sweeper role. He's someone who's good at bringing the ball out from deep, calming things, composing things from the centre of the park. He'll have learnt a lot of that from Corey Evans. And I think often his role is not the flashiest of roles. And I think a lot of football fans, not just Sunderland fans, but football fans in general, for me personally, don't appreciate enough the ugly side of being in the midfield and having to do the sweeper role and doing the ugly side of it so you can flourish further up the pitch. Dan Neil, for me, did that a lot in abundance. Now, I know it was against Oxford last season at home, and I know they had a few injuries at that point, but I think Dan Neil was easy for me. He was a class above the likes of Oxford. And I think Dan Neil, is clear to see, is a high-end Championship midfielder, and I will die on that hill. I will die on the fact he was not a crap midfielder for us. And I don't personally, although everyone's entitled to their opinion, I don't understand how people can say Dan Neil wasn't a good footballer, because I think he was. I absolutely think he was. Certainly, is he good enough for the Prem? Right now, probably not. But I think he played a massive part towards Sunderland, and he captained the club for however many seasons. And like as a few others have said, one of my mates says this, Phil Smith has said this. He has done more for his boyhood club than a lot of people get to do in their careers. And I think again with Roberts, with Patterson, these guys have to be looked back on fondly. They have to be looked back on with saying, you guys played a key role in getting us back to where we were. Sorry, back to where we are, rather, where we belong. And I hope Dan Neil, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if it was agent Jack Clark in this, because I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Neil went to Ipswich because of Jack Clark being there. Thanks very much to the 60 people who are watching, by the way. That's insane for me. But I think it's great to see that Dan Neil and Jack Clark are reunited, and I think Dan Neil, hopefully he smashes it at Ipswich. And then he will not be, I promise he will not be short of suitors in the summer. So good luck to Dan Neil. I really, really hope he smashes it. Let's go through some more comments now because I'm quite some way behind now. Sorry for the waffle again. It's sad to see players leave, says Bojingles, but the evolution of the club, long gone are the days where players get testimonials bar 09. Richard, yeah, I agree with you too, actually. I hope 09 stays for testimonial. Yeah, let's just keep 09 for another 2 years, yeah? 2 years after this one. Keep him until he retires. If anyone does testimonial, it's 09, I think. Bone Jingles. Huggins is at Wickham, but that was in the summer and he was in League One. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Huggins, I think there'll be money to be made off him, probably. So we'll wait and see when the time comes. Obviously, Casey's got a few Sheffield United tweets, so I'll skip over those. Here's one from Casey. Yeah. I'm going to miss Paddy Roberts now he's gone, and so is Lauren. He was her favourite player. And Crush. Yeah, a lot. Yeah, she definitely was. She definitely has a crush on Patrick Roberts, and I love it. And I always definitely remember his goal at Sheffield Wednesday as well. Again, that goal was so vital. Without that, we don't start the journey back. Mini Messi, absolutely. Before Paddy Roberts came to Sunderland, he used to play for Chris Davies, who's the Birmingham City manager. Well, that would make sense, to be fair. Oh, sorry, hang on. We'll get through this comment here. Bo Jingles again, once this comment loads up. They're all building blocks of the club's history. Completely spot on, Mara. I could not agree more. Knowing me, knowing you, I think this comment is really lovely. There is genuine affection and genuine gratitude for the likes of Neil, Roberts and Pato, etc. Everyone wishes them well, and there have been nice comments from Neil and Roberts since leaving. Absolutely. I think it's great to see that these players are going to be looked back on fondly. Remember, they came in at a point when we were at our lowest ebb and a really dark period in our history. Bear 1 second. Yeah, they were at our lowest as the low at that point when they started playing in the first team, and I think they dragged us from the doldrums of League One, and they really helped put us back on the map, really. And I think even in the Championship, they embraced the challenge of playing for Sunderland, and they didn't see it as a. What I think was impressive about these guys was the fact they didn't see it as a. Well, I'm going to steal a quote from Kieran Brady here. About 10 or so years ago, I would say a lot of players viewed Sunderland as a holiday camp where you don't have to perform at your best. Just do the bare minimum occasionally and you'll be all right. And whereas I think these guys set the high standards that should be at a club like Sunderland, at an institution of an industry of a club the size of Sunderland Association Football Club. We should be one of the big benchmarks in this country. And for me, I think it was great to see that these guys embraced it and they gave everything for the shirt. And that is and it's such a cliche thing. Yes, we like quality players as well, as every football fan does. But if you give 100% as a bare minimum with the quality as well, you will be adored. You will be absolutely adored. And particularly these guys got it. And even with Roberts, who wasn't even an academy lad or from the area, you got to remember that as well. He just got it. He got it. And I think that's something that's got to be really important to remember. And it's the same when any of these guys, when eventually they say the likes of Mundell goes, or say the likes of say when Yelder or Pat will leave permanently if they do. These things all have to be taken into consideration for them. So even if they frustrated you, even if you didn't rate them as players, they all played a massive part. And the big dressing room and the team spirit in the dressing room is a huge factor in why Sunderland are back in the Premier League. And hopefully will thrive in the Premier League. Right, guys, I think we're going to leave it in a couple of minutes. See if there's any more quick questions you want me to add. Is there anyone I missed in the January window? I don't think there is, but let me know what you think about it. Quickly, obviously, I'm on the Midweek Mackems podcast with Conrad, Mike, and Wayne tonight. All three lovely lads. Love them to bits. Love doing the show with them. And I can't wait for them to talk and have Mike talk about Europe again, probably, being the ever-eternal optimist. But, I love these guys, and it's great that people like to watch us. It's great just to see us. And yeah, I'm really looking forward tonight. So see if there's any questions that you want me to put forward to the lads tonight on Midweek Mackems. I cannot wait. Obviously, I've got to go to work soon enough, which is... But once I get past that, then I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to doing the podcast with the lads. But and thanks to everyone who has been watching. I wanted to I put this stream up very, very late last night to give you guys a bit of prep, or a bit of a notice that I was going to go live. But thanks to everyone who has stuck by and watched. It really does mean a lot that people like to sort of watch me talk. Let me know if there's any. I'm going to try and see if I can get the likes of maybe Dougie Critchley, if he's up for it, Matt SB back on here if they want to come back on again. Maybe even Jack Dodds again, James Copley, whoever else. Taff, Connor, whoever. We'll see if we can try and get a few of these lads on. Hey, if Jam Sani's watching, let's see if we can get a Sani pod going on my channel here. But yes, no, thanks to everyone who has watched. It honestly does mean a lot. And as I said, Sunderland beat Burnley. We're in 8th in the Premier League. Let's see if we're still in the top half by the end of the weekend. Then I think I'm pretty happy, because if I was to quickly touch on Arsenal, for me, this game's a free hit. Now, I know there's no such thing. I know there'll be some fans that won't like that term and won't like to deem it as a free hit. But let's be honest, Arsenal for me are easily one of at least the first or second best team in the league. Away from home, it is going to be very hard. Now, if Xhaka was playing, I would not be surprised if we nicked a point from this. But I think we will probably miss him in this game. I think personally for me... Oh, actually, one more quick thing I'll talk about. Geertruida. I can't believe I forgot to mention it. It's a good thing that he stayed, because I'm someone who believes that he should be playing more regularly. And I think that, okay, he didn't play on Monday night, which I was a little baffled by, but in the end it didn't matter. But I think that might have been because against Burnley, we're expected to have more of the ball. We're expected to dominate things. We're expected to not be under as much pressure. So maybe we were saving Geertruida for Arsenal. Geertruida has to start for me on Saturday against Arsenal, because we can't let ourselves get bullied and overran, because Arsenal are physical, they're athletic, they're aggressive in the right way. They are a dangerous threat from set pieces. We have to make sure we can deal with them. Personally, for me, if we lost but we competed, I can more than accept that. I can more than accept the fact that Arsenal will just be better. But you never know. You never know what can happen. Wolves went there a few weeks ago and gave it a really good account. Wolves did. Obviously, we drew 2-2, but again, Wolves only lost in the last minute at the Emirates and nearly got a point. So if we get the tactics right, you never know. But we shall see. But yes, guys, I will love yous and leave yous. Thanks to everyone again who's watched. I've said that about 100 times, but I'm going to head off now. Enjoy your Wednesday if you're at work. Hopefully, this helped kill an hour for you. Can't believe I ended up going on for an hour. But thanks to everyone who has watched and stay safe. Look after yourselves, and I will see you tonight on Midweek Mackems. If not, then after Saturday at Arsenal. And as always, how we the lad.